Hello, divine souls. Welcome to Soul Journey, a space for spiritual quest and gaining spiritual insight and wisdom, learning from others. Today, we have in conversation with us Herb Verma from Ontario, who is a software developer. But we are learning from him about the teachings of Baba Sawan Singh Ji and his disciple Ishwar Puri Ji. Let's learn from him. And yes, if you have watched our videos before and liked them, enjoyed them, please like and subscribe to our channel, share with your friends and family to reach a wider audience, spreading a great message for spiritual oneness and unity. Thank you. Welcome to Soul Journey, Herb Ji. I'm so grateful that you are here. And I recorded a little bit of your information, but could you please start with your own journey and share about your relationship to spirituality first?
Well, I'd first like to start by thanking you and all of those who listen to your channel. It is always wonderful to share this seeking. There is something that drives all of us about other than our normal day-to-day things. And many will say, pursuit of unknown, or there is something within me that I search, or we call it a seeking. So those who hear your channel, I like to wish them well, and I also like to thank you for inviting me. Now, as far as my journey begins, I think I'm just an ordinary person like anyone else, going about in the world, pursuing the world with all of the strength and the might, and trying to make a better life, and on pursuit of what really makes us happy. So my journey really has been on and off from spirituality to pursuit of the world. And I found that they have both traveled in parallel for me. And because perhaps maybe my upbringing in such a way that I've been raised by my grandparents on my father's side, and they were Aryasmaji, so which means that they were not so much about going to temple on seeking spirituality, but they were very driven. Being my grandfather was a freedom fighter, all of his life he spent on freedom of India, and my father was a very known artist of India as well as engineer. So they on their own way, and so it's been a question of looking at life and the nature of things very deeply for me, which I have asked the question, what is the purpose of life? At a very young age. Perhaps maybe it emanates from when I was just maybe 2 or 3 years old. I realized that I have been here before, and this human experience seems to be that I have gone through many times. So there doesn't seem to be any reason why I am here into this form.
Wow, this
And
is interesting. As a child, you could feel the
yes,
connection that,
I
okay,
feel that very intensely, and so I didn't really speak to anyone, but this feeling was very strong in me. What is the reason for all of that? Because I would look at everyone around me, I look at their experiences, their interaction with one another, and I could feel what they say is one thing, but in their heart is something else. And this sort of, you know, how can I say this thing in a where they would use sweeter word, but their mind and their heart was not as pure as their words. So I saw this distinction between that people behave in such a way which really made it difficult for me to look at even life and to like this human interaction. But like anything else, when you're small, you're like a blank page, anything can be put on it. And
yeah,
and
yeah.
so my grandfather was a great influencer. He raised me up in such a way that they were practicing Rajput. They still practice Kshatriya way of life. And lots of the way of looking at life was given by him, how to be strong, how to be determined. never bow before anyone and make your own destiny. Those were the sort of the strength that he guided me with. And so, of course, this carried on, but I pursued like any other human being. We came to Canada at the age of 15. And then here I did my education, went into aeronautic field, and then eventually switched into IT field and started my own firm in 2006 in Canada here in Toronto and opened up my own software company, and I have been serving it ever since, running it ever since. But now I'm in the final stages where I'm wrapping that up because this science of self-knowledge, which is started by Ishwar Ji in 2000, and he has asked me to be part of that and to spread the teachings of the Sant Mat. And, so from my family side, married with two children, I have two grandchildren.
Wow. That's blissful. That's really, very
Yeah,
nice.
absolutely. So from I think, human experience perspective, I would say my life has been very blessed. I have experienced all the roles that I could as a son, as a brother, as a husband, as a son-in-law, and I've really enjoyed all of those ones, seeing them all as my duty, that I can't be successful in one thing while fail in the other. I must be successful in all of them. And that's the sense of I've always felt. So I have really enjoyed all that life has given me from all different experiences one can have while being on the earth. So that's the nutshell, in you can say, in a shorter version of.
Did you come from an Arya Samaj background, and their way of life is based on a lot of discipline. And so how did you get into Sant Mat? Because that is very fluid
Yes,
and very expensive.
that's very interesting story. My grandfather on the maternal side, my nana, he was following Sant Mat very early age when he was very young. I believe even before getting married. So he was born in I believe, 1899, something like this.
Oh.
Yeah, and so he has since, before getting married, so he followed this path of Sant. He was a disciple up on the Radhaswami side, great master Maharaj Sawan Singh Ji.
Mhm.
And his wife also followed on the same. They were both initiates and disciples of Maharaj Sawan Singh Ji. And then my mother was born. She was the only child, and who also took initiation at the age of 9. She was also came on this path. So really, it's interesting life. On one hand, my father's sides are all Arya Samaji, and on my mother's side, they're all
Yeah,
Satsangi and following the path of Sant Mat. So there is definitely little bit of spark that time to time takes place on both sides.
yeah. For the sake of people, some people may not fully understand Sant Mat. Could you explain? Because sometimes there is a confusion between the teachings of Sant Kabir and the Sant Mat as we understand, as I and you understand. So, how do we distinguish between the two, and what really is Sant Mat all about?
Let me see if I can explain this in a simple way. I myself also consider students, so my depth in the given area would be just from my own personal way of looking at it.
Yeah.
But the Satmat would be a simple way to see is a teaching of a saint, or teachings of the saint, on which particular way they will guide us in terms of what is the way that we can seek this inner truth. And so when we speak of Kabir, he introduced Sant Mat. We also consider the father of Sant Mat, meaning that he was the saint after a given practice will be referred to as a Surat Shabd Yoga, means that one way that one can reach enlightenment or the truth within is to connect the soul to the eternal sound that exists in the entire creation. And so Kabir ji was the first one to bring this as a practice. And then from there on, many lineage have come up on the path of Sant Mat, teachings of the saint. Most of the Gurbani speak of the gurus and the devotion to the gurus, and also speaks about the Shabd, speaks about them. So that is also the same lineage on that. So really, it is about truth which lies in all human beings, which everyone can access by uniting to the inner power, the inner presence that exists in all. As in Bible, Jesus referred to as a word. He says clearly in the Bible, there was a word was with God, and the word made everything. This word means that there is this creative power in the creation that resonates in every part of this creation. And therefore it also exists in a human being. And if the soul were to become one-pointed, it can unite itself to the sound, and through this sound it can reach the highest spiritual region, and not only know itself, but it can become one with God as well. And this is really essentially simple way that I can describe is the teachings of the Sant Mat. And of course, the center line or the center point of this force is that love, that the power in the creation which has the ability to unite is love. Means that, like any other forces, gravity is a force in which if you throw anything up, it'll draw itself to the center or to the earth, which means there is a magnetic power which pulls something to its center. And so in a human being, it's the same way. We have a mind which job is to see the creation in manyness. Then there is a soul which has the power of love, which sees many into one. And so therefore the central of Sant Mat teaching is love, because on this basis, two on the journey of love can become one. And so, of course, it's like any other spiritual sadhana, it has a practice that you follow. But in the end, once you have spent some time on that practice, you will realize that it is not really a practice. It is to cultivate love in one heart, where you could be drawn to your own source.
Yeah, so that takes me to, like you mentioned about creation. So what does Sant Mat say about the creation, the origin, and how we have landed on this planet, and what is our purpose, you know, through this creation, that, whatever that was the source, and why did it create? Why did it have to create?
I know it's a good question, and I think this question has been asked just about every single time.
Yeah,
Right? It's almost every human being will ask that as well. Now, what is, not only at a personal level where we ask, what is the purpose of my own being? Why am I here?
yeah,
And then we ask the question, what is the purpose of this grand creation? I
yeah.
think,
It's a bit too huge and vast, and so many mixed races and even aliens walk within us. And
well, yeah, this question, my master would sometime lovingly say that we should ask the one who's created it, and then he will laugh. But from a understanding or a story perspective, that we can say that almost all religion of the world, almost all scripture speak of the one. Right? There is one God, and is one God responsible for the creation of this. And so the question would be, he could have been just happy with himself. Why did he need to create the creation?
yeah,
What was the cause of creating a creation? And says in the Sant Mat that it was his Mauj. Mauj means it was his playful will that the creation came to be. And if we go more deeper into that, and we also would hear that that God is not only one, but his nature is, as the creation is formed into creation, that he is omnipresent, he's omnipotent, and he's omniscient. And also, just what every scripture would also say, that God is love. So the question would be that if he's only one and all of these qualities that he has, he's the complete knowledge, then how these things can be into experience? And the nature of experience is as such that without two, the experience cannot take place. What I mean by this, if God is love, but the experience of love doesn't exist. And if we need to have the experience, then therefore need to be two on which this love can be developed. And the moment when you say two, you can see one must become two to have that experience, to have the experience of its own self. And so we could say perhaps this could be the original desire, or it could simply be that one wished to experience himself. How would he do that? He would create the creation to experience that, and he'll become the creation. And therefore, you can see vast and grand creation because there are different levels of this creation, all the way from a spiritual part, what we in Sant Mat refer to as Sachkhand, the first spiritual region on which one became many, meaning that one soul, the singular entity that all refer to, became many soul within itself. And therefore, the creation further went down into the causal or the mental world, and then it further comes down into the astral, and then it comes down into the physical world. And each level of this creation has the most grand level of experience as you come down. And so this really whole creation is full of creation. Oh, sorry, full of experience of creation, whether it be an object, whether it be a place, or whether it be a people. And so the grand question about why he created this creation, I can only say and agree with my master that it is simply his playful will to create a place for us to play, and also to experience our own truth, meaning that if we say we are love, how we would know that we are love. And this idea, if you notice that in this physical world, the knowledge emerges from duality, meaning that there has to be two parts, two ends for us to know that one exists. What I mean by this is, so if there was a light all the time and there was no darkness, we would not recognize light. We cannot say it's light until the darkness emerges. The moment the darkness is there, we can differentiate between the two. And not only we can differentiate the two, by experience of these two, we can also determine what could be possibly real and what not. So what I mean by this is for the light to show that it carries a higher truth, and the darkness that doesn't, as soon as you turn the light on, the darkness goes away and the light remains. So not only the knowledge which emerged that what is higher, but you became to understand what was darkness and what was light. And if there was only one existing, you would not have the understanding of this knowledge. And therefore you can now see that without all of those qualities of God, if there was no way to experience it, this possibility of creation would not exist. Because all of those qualities to be experienced, therefore, a simple way to say that creation came about.
Yeah, true. In fact, when we look at certain ancient scriptures, what I've learned recently, I wasn't too much into all that. Just about 2 years ago, I started going a little bit more into depth, and I learned about the 14 lokas, and and then there are realms even beyond the 14. One, the highermost is Param,
Yes.
and then there is beyond that. Paramdham is one level of the Brahman, the smallest celestial system, that is our solar system, and then there are beyond that creators beyond that. So at each level, there is a creator. So here we are talking about the ultimate creator.
Absolutely. Absolutely. As you said, there are many lokas. And the simple way the Sant Mat explained that is really the question of the awareness, meaning how does this knowledge that there are lokas, what is there within us that makes this experience of knowing possible? So it's really a question of the two capacity that is built within us. One is the attention, and the other one is the awareness. And it is the attention and the awareness which makes us the experience. So in other words, from the highest experience, from where we are at the top, we became many in one. How did we do that? We simply contracted the awareness. One contracted the awareness into many. So for example, if you look at the ocean, you could say it contains many drops. How many drops can it contain? It could contain one single drop as an ocean, or it can contain infinite drops as the ocean. But they're all within it. And therefore, exactly the same way up on the top, that there is one being who becomes the many. And so how does this manyness take place? It simply takes place contracting the awareness. And you can keep on contracting the awareness to the point where here we are as a physical being, and we do not remember that there is a whole universe within us. We only remember what we see with physical eyes, what we hear with this ear, and the senses that we have. But we do not know the entire universe, the lokas, and all 14 loka that you mentioned. Where do you think they exist? Do they exist outside of us, or they exist within us?
That's a
And
good
clearly
question. I ponder on that also, that, we different philosophies will talk about it differently. And this is the earthly realm. So there are realms above. So definitely, maybe when, in our spiritual state of being, in our soul consciousness or being in Atma Swarup, may take us, lead us upwards. Or depending on that, where we are in our thoughts and our being, we could fall down too. And Buddhism talks about 10 worlds within this 5 foot body. They say from hell to enlightenment, everything is there within this body. So I'm just here talking to you.
yes, and that is true. This idea that how is it possible that the world that I see with my physical eye is so vast, then there could be a even grand creation and universes exist within me. I'm a tiny little being. How is this possible that it could be packed in? And the simple way that my master would try to explain or to this idea, and it is also similar to my own pursuit of this knowledge as well as a science, that how is a conscious being, how this is become possible in a consciousness that this creation can be all inside. And the good way that we can understand is the analogy or the experience of dream, that when we are sleeping, we are unaware of where we are. So our physical body that we have, we are unaware of that. And then as we sleep, we go into the dream state. And in the dream state, you meet many people and you have conversation, you go to places. I'm sure everyone have dream time to time. As they say, almost every human being have a dream every single night. They may not remember the separate thing. But in that dream, let's say you have a loving conversation, and you might have someone who's chasing you, wanting to harm you. You have all these different experiences where in the dream there is you as a localized person, and then there are other people and other forms. And you're going through this experience. You do not know you're in the dream. But when you wake up, you realize that the localized form exists no more. And all the people that you were having a conversation with, they also don't exist. And also the experiences where someone is trying to harm you or chase you also didn't exist. So where was this dream taking place? Where was this space was created for you to go from place A to B? Where was this place where these people were created? And where was this expression was created? Your body was lying. So which space was that experience taking place? It was taking place within you while you're totally unaware of your physical body. But when you wake up from the physical body, you realize that none of those things are true. They simply happened, they occurred in my own consciousness or in my own mind. So is it to say that it's only happened for a dream? Or is it also say the physical reality precisely like that? And so when I say awareness, it's a really expansion of awareness. So what really happened from the dream to the waking state? We lost the awareness of the dream and we woke up and became aware of the wakeful state in the physical world. And you can see the moment we did that, all of the experiences that we had were gone. However, the experience itself, remembering that somebody was chasing me, or I was having this conversation, or even I saw my master that I loved so dearly into this conversation as well. You remember all of that, but none of those objects, not the place, none of that existed. This is a good way to understand that it is really is a question of awareness. This physical is also a form of that. You can wake up. The meditative process in the Sant Mat is precisely that. You wake up from one state to another state to another state to another state. And you find that you were always in the spiritual realm. You never left. The only thing you did was to contract your awareness from there into the causal form, into the astral form, and into the physical form. And here you are as a human being. So the reversal process is just the same. Expand your awareness from this to the next body by way of meditation, and you can continue to go up in your awareness. So the same ladder that you came down with is the same ladder you used to go up.
Yeah, and realize that this was all a lie all the while. It's
And,
interesting.
and and that is the good way also to look at the Maya would be like that. Maya means there's something illusionary that doesn't exist. However, the example that I gave in the dream as well, if you were having a wonderful meal with someone, you can't deny that I tasted the meal, I drank the water, I had wonderful drink. But when you wake up, you realize that all of those objects on which the experience was created no longer exist, but the experience still remains. I can still taste the juice in my mouth. I can still taste the food in my mouth. So it's a good way to understand that the illusion means that the experiences are real because the is real, but the objects and the parts on which the experience is created, they're not. So the simple way to understand as the Maya being the illusionary.
Yeah, so I want to know a little bit because you are a very close disciple and you're doing so much work now on the path of Sant Mat as a disciple of Sant Ishwar Puri Ji. Can you share something about his life and his connection with the Baba Sawan Singh? What is the story?
Oh, yes, wonderful. Yes, he was born from a family who was already following great master Baba Sawan Singh Ji. And, and therefore, right from a birth, you could say there was a connection. And there is a story on the YouTube that he shares how was the first time that he has met when he was, I think, only a few months old, when he was just born. So he was born on November 26, 1926, and his father took him to see Great Master. And so, of course, being a little baby, you don't remember all of these things, but he shares it that Great Master pat him on his little cheek and says, "Do you remember me?"
Mhm.
And
He named him too, right?
Yes, and he recalls in one of his talks that as he grown older, he meditated, and so he remembers that conversation being a little baby, that great master asking, "Do you remember me?" So his association through his father was very devoted disciple of great master. He's written many wonderful books. His name was Lake Rajpuri, who has really brought this to a science level as well. So there is quite a wonderful literature that he has written on this as well. So Guruji was has spent most of his childhood because they were living at the Dera, and so he has natural association with that. On one day, his grandfather decided that I would take my grandson for at least half initiation. And in those days, the great master would give half initiation. Half initiation means that he will teach a small boys from age 9 before they are sort of adult 16, 17 or 18 to give them a full initiation to just to listen to the inner sound. And then the Simran or the mantra will be given as a full initiation later on once they practice. So his grandfather thought, best way to start. His grandfather was also a disciple of great master. And so his grandfather took him and so in jokingly great master would ask the boys or the girls, what do you want? You want sweet or you want sour? And so he will have some candy. So if anyone wants, I want the sweet. And so he'll give a candy and they'll run away. And so there is a YouTube videos on which he describes so lovingly. I mean, you could see the bonds and the love between that story. And so, of course, the great master asked Ishwarji, what do you want? You want the sweet or you want the naan? And he said, he points the finger, Ishwarji points the finger and he said, I want this at the age of 9. And so he held his hand while what is referred to as a chanti means that not all boys who came or children who came to receive the half initiation will be selected. So he'll go through, see who's there, who needs to have it. So he'll create the group and give them the initiation. And so he did his chanti, but he kept Ishwarji with him. And after all of this, and he said to Ishwarji, to you, I will give you full initiation. And so he was initiated at the age of 9 on this path. And you could see that all of his life that he has spent, and of course there have been time on which he felt that maybe because my parents were on this path, I never got really the opportunity to look at what would be the other options, what would be the other spiritual path. And so after initiating by the great master, he shares this story that coming home and this satsangi couple says that, what have you done to your boy? He 9-year-old, he didn't have the opportunity to seek the answer for himself, and you have forced him into this path. And he was on the other side listening to it, and he kind of believed that that is right. I've been indoctrinated into something that my parents believe, but I never really had the privilege to explore. So even then, he continued to, throughout his younger days, he he became Muslim, he became Buddhist, he converted to Christianity, he went into every single path there was to see what is the difference between the teachings of the saint and to all of the other religions. And he practiced. So he was very advanced in just about every, you could say, modality of spirituality, whether it be on the yogic side, whether it be on the different Abrahamic religion side. And so he practiced all of them. And he found that he made some progress, meaning that he would see some light inside and, some attention becoming one pointed, but he still didn't come to know who he was. And so then I think after the age of 17 or 18, he returned to Great Master to say, I have searched all that I could, but now I'm sincerely going to practice your method. And so he practices Surya Yoga and sees that, and it makes immense amount of progress. And through meditation and many hours of meditation that he would do, just to say on this path it says that you have to meditate for about 2.5 hours daily in order to make the study progress. But then he asked Great Master, is that a limit? Or can I meditate as long as the Great Master says, meditate as long as who said 2.5 hours, meditate 8 hours and meditate for 10 days nonstop. And so therefore he did like a Hatha Yoga and realized that the meditation he was doing, it was giving some experiences, but it seems to be something missing in it and on this path. And realizing that it is really not the practice of the meditation, but it is to cultivate the love within, which will draw to its own self. And that is the sort of method that, or the conversation Great Master had to say, look, meditation is for you to fail, to realize that it is not the meditation. It is the inner love. It is the cultivation, a love for God that will draw you. And when he began the meditation like that, he was able to reach in his awareness all the way, where we say the totality can be experienced and having an awareness of total. And so that is on the spiritual path, but he has served his master from a very young age. He joined the civil service, so he was in very high post, many government positions. As you probably already know, that he has done some incredible worldly thing. He was a scientist, he was a doctor, and I believe after the 1960 or so that he receives, even though the great master was passed away in 1948 on April 2nd, so from inner guidance he received that he should also help those who seeks the truth within, is to bring them into this path. So, but he never says he was a master. He just simply says, I was doing seva to my master. The initiation that I give you is not my initiation, it is the initiation of my master. So the love that he shares in its satsang about his master, I find is very deeply moving for me, that one can be devoted to this level, that they will spend their entire life serving their master.
Yeah.
So
All the videos, sorry to, stop your, interfere with your, what you were saying, that in almost all his videos, whatever I saw, that he has been full of praises, always acknowledged him, never once said that it's what he is talking about, or he always refers to the great master. And sometimes I wonder what brought him to the western side of the world, and he created a huge family of seekers, like brought them together.
yes, I mean, before this interview, I was meditating and asking Master to say, whatever is said through me, let it be your words, because I am really a student on this thing, and what needs to be said should be your word. So it's a good place to start, but it's like, why did he come? I think it was prediction of Great Master, where he said in 1920, in 1940s or so, he wrote letters to American. He had many Americans disciple, and where he said that axis of spirituality will shift from east to the west. And Ishwarji were present, and he knew this prediction. And so he wanted to reach here in America, be on the ringside seat and watch this entire shift take place. And I think from my own personal perspective, not a ringside seat. I think he's the first one to sow a seed in the North America. And when you hear his lecture and when you hear the talks previously that takes place in India and the way it is expressed by him in English here, it really resonates with all of the people in the West. It's the same teaching, but it's brought in just such a simple way that motivates, it resonates to the deeper part of our being. And so I think he is the first one following the prediction of Great Master that the spirituality of Acts is going to shift to the West.
Yeah, that's interesting because almost all of his videos he has in his discourses, they are very direct. They talk to you very directly. And you seem to be nodding your head. You don't have a question, This is what I've noticed, at least for myself, when I used to, kind of have any questions and browsing through his videos, and I would say, oh, wow, here's the answer. So that was very interesting.
I find it, see, when we come to know the truth, the logical part of the mind is satisfied, but also, before I came to any path, I deeply believed that all answer exists within. And I also believe that no question can exist if the answer wasn't there. It is the answer which gives birth to the question. These were the fundamentals that I believed very earlier on in my age. And so when you hear the truth, you will find that your question must be satisfied and they should be put to rest in the very deeper way, where you will say, I think this is absolutely the truth. Now, on the other hand, your mind may not fully convince, meaning that it may have other questions and so on. But when you hear this truth, you will be satisfied. And that's the one way to say that when the truth is spoken from the experience itself, then it will penetrate the heart very easily, and all of the understanding will be transferred into the one who's listening.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I'm nodding my head with you because you're also confirming the same thing.
Yes. Like sometimes when I think about all this, I also want to understand how does one assess oneself, whether we are on the right path, whether we are doing the right thing, supposing whatever system of practice one is following, to meditate or to gain more of spiritual insight and awareness. What is it that one can do to assess where he or she is at that point of time? And then my second question is that what are the stages did Baba Sawan Singh Ji or Sant Ishwar Puri Ji, suggest that these are the steps you need to take to move forward on this path?
Well, each human being has something within them that, from the experience of life, gives them the understanding that something is missing. So I could also say that from my own life experience. After pursuing so many things, because hearing other people say you should set goals, you should achieve these things, and I'm not saying you shouldn't do that, but when you do achieve that thing, it makes you feel good for a moment. But then that intensity, that high part, or the moment in which you feel high that something extraordinary has happened, only lasts for a while and it goes away. And this pattern tend to repeat with everything. And then you begin to pick out of this pattern, then what is it that I worked so hard to achieve something, and when I reach that height, it makes me feel good for momentarily and then disappear, and then I have to set another goal to just have this small high. And then with this pursuit, I would say personally for myself, I begin to ask the question, what is it within me that gives me this experience of happiness? And then what is it that this experience goes away? Is the happiness came from outside in me, or was it always in me? And somehow, with some expression, it was able to surface up into my experience. So I've asked this question for myself, and I've discovered that it was always within me. And therefore, the outside, I was connecting the outside through all of these circus of life, where hoping that whatever that I do, whatever that I achieve in life, and all of those things that we are said, you should have all this material wealth, you should have wonderful family, you should have you should have good career. All of those things are important. To say that they would make us happy, I would say my experience is the other way. I have achieved those things, but it has not brought the lasting happiness to me. And therefore, this idea that we can pursue or we should seek is exist in all human beings. You will see that end of journey of this life, we will still arrive to the point that I've done all of that. What next? I'm still not happy. So this seeking that there is something within me, and this idea that what is it that make me want to achieve something? Is it because I don't have it? Or is it that will really make me everlast or bring me everlasting happiness? And so this seeking, which means to seek something higher, seek something eternal, seek something that is everlasting, this question comes up in all. And that's the first point of many people address this. Who am I? What is the purpose that I have? I mean, it starts in early stages like that. Or it could simply be that I've gone through life from a childhood, I'm at this certain age. There seems to be so much changes within me, but there is a presence within me that never seems to change, even though there is a time passes by. What is this thing here? I want to become more familiar with that. So many of us seek this question from that. And I would say what I understand now is because there is a presence of God within each and every one of us. And that presence is always connected, if the nature is eternal. But when it comes to this experience into human form, it has lost itself, and therefore this intensity to return home remains in all human beings. It's just a question of what point in time in the journey of this reincarnation, what life will trigger that seeking. So we all have that, where we seek something higher, we seek something eternal that is beyond the physical body, that is beyond the physical life and all of these experiences of life. So the question, how one can make progress, I think the truth will be that what knowledge do we use to pursue the outside world? And the question would be, is there is a knowledge on the inside which can give us this purpose or can give us this clarity? So really, if you look at the knowledge perspective, there are two kinds of knowledge. One is the knowledge of the outside, which is about this creation, about the universe, about who we are, and all of these physical laws and so on. Then there is the knowledge on the inside, which teaches you how to turn inward. Apar Vidya we call Par Vidya and Apar Vidya. Okay, two different kinds of knowledge. So this knowledge would one begins to pursue after a time when they feel that this life this life is not giving them what they need, and that's when they begin to pursue some of these spiritual practices. So in other words, this life is not fully all that glorious the way we think it is. And it's like the incidents of life we go through. We have sufferings, and we have sometimes our relationship doesn't go well. When everything's going well, we don't think about that there is some different nature within us. When some suffering comes, that's when we begins to ask the question, what is this life? What is the purpose of this life? I remember asking similar question like that when I was 13-year-old. My grandmother that I deeply loved, and she passed away. And so we had to go, the grandson responsibility and the son responsibility to cremate. This is the sort of the culture in Hindu is that, when the son is alive, they will cremate, or the grandson is alive, will cremate. So I remember seeing her lying on an ice slab because they don't have really the morgue or where they can keep the body, they keep it at home. And she looks exactly physically the same as she looked ever, but her body was still. And I remember seeing that, her form, and asking first the question, what was in her that left?
Yeah.
What animated her body? I stared at her for a good long time, asking this question again and again and again and again. What is it that left? And then in the end, I promised to myself that I will devote my life to pursue of this question. What is it that lived in her that now left this body is no more animated? Her eyes doesn't blink anymore. She cannot speak anymore. Her heart doesn't beat anymore. What is it that was creating her alive? What was the keeping her alive? So these questions comes in a many different forms. But when it begins to come, I would say we automatically turn inward. We begin to seek some sort of understanding and we draw ourselves toward all different paths of spirituality, all different paths, perhaps maybe based on the way we have lived our previous life, because there is a tendency within us right from a birth that we gravitate towards certain things and not gravitate towards the other. Right? The question would be that if we all born the same way and we are always a blank page, then why do we have these differences within us?
Yeah.
Right? And so the answer would be that it's a continuation of a life where certain sanskar or certain tendency has been built, and therefore in each birth that tendency is there. So we gravitate toward different spiritual practices and we follow, like anything else, what resonates with us, and we practice that. And, doing this, sometimes we are successful and sometimes we are not on that. And when we are not, we look for something else. And so you could see that progress really means is relative to someone, right? One is to follow a practice and be diligent in it. The other one is this practices or this sadhana is giving you something where you are knowing yourself.
Yeah, and what about the obstacles? Two things here. When one is doing the practice or sadhana, one could have obstacles maybe in daily life. They could intensify. And the second thing is about the psychic attacks. People could be attacked, by entities or something, that could disturb or shake the person off or maybe possess. What does Sant Mat or what did Ishwar Puri Ji say about that? How to deal with it and cope with it?
Well, on Sant Mat, they said the biggest obstacle in any spiritual practice is our own mind. There is no bigger obstacle than our own mind, because it is the instrument on which the creation has been separated. It is the instrument on which we experience the creation. The manyness in which we experience is come from the mind. It is the mind which is responsible for all the experience of many things, manyness. So whatever we experience, it is a projection of our own mind. And so when we speak of, yes, there are negative nature, but they're all made within the mind itself. So in a daily life or in a working life, what could be the obstacle? You could see that it is the mind that will keep us. It'll always tell us that what we do as in the creation. So for example, our day-to-day things are more important than finding the question who we are. Right? It will not draw you to that. Right? We would rather watch a movie on a Netflix for 3 hours than to meditate for 3 hours. Right? And why is the reason for this? Because the mind current from the soul flow outwardly. Outward means towards the creation. And the soul current, which needs to know itself, flows inwardly. And so when we are in the world, this power which not only keeping the body alive, which keeping the senses alive, but it's also keeping the mind alive from the power of thinking and so on. So all the expression the mind is creating is outwardly. So, in our worldly life, we struggle with relationship and the interaction with one another. Our own emotion keeps us occupied. Our duties around the world or duties around the family keeps us occupied. So it keeps us occupied to the point we never get a time to ask this question: who am I? Who is the one who's going through all this experience? Who is the one experiencing as a wife? Who is experiencing as a daughter? What within me is having all of these experiences? We never ask this question. And so really the biggest obstacle is our own mind. And the Sant Mat says that put this mind aside. The whole practice is to bring the mind through the system of Surya Shabd Yoga is very simple. The first one is to preventing the mind from thinking, means that the mind will always think, the heartbeat of the mind is thinking, and therefore it will always think everything away from your own self. So rather than just thinking randomly about anything and everything, the master gives you a mantra on which repeating it, you force the mind to think on this mantra that is given to you. So now it only thinks about these mantra that is given. And that brings the mind into oneness. Okay, as you practice this thing here. And then from there onward, you bring the attention to one pointedness where your awareness begins to withdraw to the point where you are at behind the eye. All of the light current is gathered from this body and begins to collect at the eye center. And from the eye center, you begin to see these different experiences. In other words, as I was saying earlier on, the ladder, the ladder that goes up and the ladder that goes out from there. So from the eye center, the world comes out, and from there, the inner world opens up. And so as it collects, and of course, because we can't develop or worship God that we haven't seen. And so you could see that we are very drawn to the form as a human being. That's why there are so many temples. That's why there are so many churches. There is always a sign. There is always a direction on which you can set your attention on and you can meditate upon. And because that form has the awareness one with the totality, and therefore thinking of that also brings you its nature. As you have heard English word, you become what you think of. And there is a truth of that as well. And so when you bring your attention into that form begins to draw. And then you begin to see on the inside, you cross in one pointedness, you begin to see a darkness, utter darkness, and from there, attention collects even more. You begin to see a sky. From a sky, you begin to see the starry sky. From starry sky, you begin to see the moon. These same physical forms and the sun, and then you eventually cross over, and your attention is one with that body which is sitting behind the eye, and then the door open to the inner world, and you enter into another body, what we call Suksham Sharir, or the astral body. So all of the capability of the astral body has opened up, and now you can see a new world that emerge. And so this is just the first part of this Sant Mat practices, but there onward, you continue with this step. You meditate again into that body, and you enter into causal world. From a causal world, you meditate again in the center of that, and first time you come to know that all of these were just a covering upon yourself. And they simply gave you the experience of the creation of time and space. And that's the first time you also realize that I am actually soul. I am the one who was having all these experiences, and they were all temporary covering upon myself. And then you also see that within all this experience, your master is still with you. So your master travels from the first stage onward to all of the stages. So you always have this friend, you can say you always have this your master or your friend who will always guide you to the further journey upward, all the way to the top.
Mm-hmm. And what about the power of the soul or the Atma that resides, that is what can you say about the Atma that is the source of all, that is you?
Well, the soul is a miniature expression of the totality. So as many scriptures have said that we are made in the image of God, it simply means that we are the copy of the original. Means all of the quality which exists within the totality. And when I say totality, I'm referring to as God, the one singular reality in which everything is happening, not outside of it, but within it. And so it is the miniature quality of this and what we refer to as a soul. And we can say this totality as an oversoul. Soul contains all of the quality of the totality. It contains love, it contains complete knowledge, it contains intuition, and it contains all of the beauty of the creation as well as the beauty of the creator within. So it has all of the power. It has free will, like the creator, but in this one here, it has the experience of free will. As the creator has the true free will, and this miniature copy, which we refer to as a soul, has the experience of free will. And so it can draw itself, and you can see that you will eventually see all those who have practiced this spiritual sadhana will come to know that it is only one power in the creation which can draw you to God and merge you into Him is the power of love, because the power of love is the only in which, in the experience, you start with two, but in the end remains as one, because it contains the force that it draws upon itself. And so the soul is the one that keeping this body alive. Soul is the one that keeping the senses alive. And you could see that when this power leaves this physical body, what happens? Even, when the presence of soul is in the body, you can cut your hand here and you'll see after a few days it will heal. And you can have a food, after a few days it will digest. Your fever, your illness would come, the illness would heal after some time. Well, once this soul leaves, or once his presence, this power leaves, this small cut on the body will never heal. Right? The food will never digest. The eyes that blinks while the soul is here will not blink anymore. The breathing that takes place will not take place. So then you ask the question, what is within this body keeping all this thing alive? Then what is the process of death? It's simply this presence leaving. So you could see the power which was keeping the body is actually a soul. And therefore, is that the only thing it contains? No, it contains much more than that. It contains all of the divine nature and quality of God within it itself. But it has forgotten through the experience as it descended down into the creation, it has forgotten its nature. And so spiritual path is nothing but knowing that nature. So as Buddha somebody asked Buddha, what have you learned through enlightenment? He said, nothing. So what do you mean? He said, I had to unlearn everything.
Yeah. Yeah.
Which means that we come to know our own nature. And that is essentially, you could say, enlightenment is nothing but just knowing your own true nature.
Yeah, that brings my mind back to my previous question about the afflictions or maybe psychic attacks a person gets, these other souls or the entities in the environment that can attack a person even while they are practicing, sincerely, whatever meditative practices or whatever spiritual practice they might be doing. That happens. It can happen to people who do not indulge in any spirituality at all. But this phenomena is there, does occur. What are your thoughts on
I
this?
don't personally have experience on those. I have all the obstacles that I've encountered from my own mind, including the forms that I would see, or the ideas or concept in which I felt that it's not serving on the path. My personal experience always been that it is my mind which have always been projecting these negative, because the nature of the mind itself is negative. If the soul is positive, the mind is negative. So in other words, the mind draws you into the experience, into negative and positive experiences. But they're all happening, these are all projection of our own self. the tendency that are within us that causes us to experience these things. This is what my personal experience is. Now, there are entities that people speak of, they have experience in which they go through these suffering. I can't really speak of those experiences.
Yeah. Did Ishwar Puri Ji say anything about them at all? Like, because I remember a long time back when I was probably in my school, high school, and one of my aunts had gone for initiation from Maharaj Kripa Singh Ji.
Hmm.
And she said that somebody got locked and Maharaji had to go and open that person. I don't know, something of that order. And probably that person was locked because of the entity, or I don't know. Do you have any thoughts on this? Just came
Well,
to my mind.
yeah, Ishwarji has spoken of these things. He shared some story in Chicago about his friend, where his friend has bought the house and the previous owner who has passed away was still there. And so, when they move to the house, they'll see sometimes the light will go on and the door will open. And he was a little alarmed on this. What is this going on? And so, but it wasn't nothing harming. It's just like, you know, being, having these experience where abnormal thing would happen. Abnormal thing meaning that, that you shut the door of the room and then suddenly door will open, or as if somebody was coming in and out of the door. And so they invited master, and the master said, yes, there is. Previous owner was very attached to this home, is still in this home. And so I can share these thoughts with you about Ishwarji on this. So I normally, personally, I don't look into too much of that because I've
Just
really
came to
kept.
my mind because nowadays I'm listening that there's going to be a lot of chaos that we are already seeing in the world, and these negative entities are going to really create a lot of ruckus. Their presence will be known, and people on the internet, they're also saying aliens are going to disclose presence. So it's quite fascinating. And so it just came to my mind that, I should ask you, and if Ishwari also said anything about the current times, what times we are heading for.
He did not say anything drastically to come. He said these are all stories that are made up in people's heads. Then, I also, I find where there is a love in one's heart, it will always be perfect.
Yeah.
And if you feel this intense a love that flows from your master, flows from the highest region, one doesn't have to be concerned. Body is made to decay, made to die, it'll die.
Yeah.
But what should we carry on with us? The knowing that we are eternal beings. And once you have this knowledge that you simply live in this body, all of these ideas about this world will come to an end, all of that would not play so crucial role in your life. You will see it very lightly. You will see it in a very amusing way. So I would say to all the friends that the change is always happening in this world, right? There is a war always happening in this world, right? We've been, for the last 5,000 years, we had more than 50,000 wars, right? And you can see how much the biggest, or the form that we should be afraid of is actually man, not really the alien. Look at the heinous crime that man would do on this earth. So, right, to say something bigger than us can harm us, I don't see that. I think we will harm our own self by believing in these things.
Yes, I've taken a lot of your time. I just have one request. If you have any message, and we will talk again
Yes.
in detail about Sant, like this was just the beginning to get to know you and little bit about Sant Mat. But what would be your message to seekers who really want to, who want to know about themselves? What are they doing here? They feel lost. What is your message to them?
On a lighter note, I would say about the life itself, lighten up a little bit. Means don't take this thing seriously. And
Yeah.
secondly, the most, among all of the questions, one question that we can ask that will bring the blessings to all is to ask the question, who am I? Means this one awareness which experiences this body, experiences all of the relationship, and goes through life. What is this presence within us? So, in other words, this intelligence, which seems to be always within me, meaning that when we run, one moment, when we run, our heartbeat increases automatically. We don't do anything, right? When we are sick, the temperature of the body raises, and then it eventually comes to the healing point. Where is the place of this intelligence within us? It seems to be presence of intelligence, which we are unaware of that. So getting in touch with this intelligence, knowing that there is something more beyond this physical body exists within me, and let me find out what that is. That will bring immense amount of clarity about in one's life. Knowing this lies all of the answer, including the answer of why we are here, what is the purpose of this relationship, what is the purpose of this karma. And this one singular question in the Greek would say, know thyself. And therefore, knowing yourself as an eternal being will bring all of the clarity to all those who seek the answer to this pursuit of life. So my wish to all that are listening in your channel would be to pray to that and to go within your own self to find the answer. All of the answers are within.
Yeah, thank you so much for your guidance. Ji, I'm very grateful for your presence here again today, and we will meet again and discuss a little bit more in depth.
I am very happy to be here, Kamaljeet Ji. It was way overdue, and I'm so happy that we were able to spend and share some of the teachings of Sant Mat with you and your viewers. So with this, I thank you for the opportunity. This was Seva to my master, and thanks to all who would be listening to this.
Thank you. Thank you.
Bye-bye.